Are you ready for this? Bam. You go first.
I'm Amelia Cormack.
And I'm Allison Gwynn, and you're in Some Dark Holler. I'd rather be in some dark holler where the sun refused to shine than for you to be another man's woman, never on earth to call you mine.
It's Sunday night. Doing another After Dark episode. That gave me life. I needed that.
I've been watching all the kunks on whatever, and how she brings up Technotronics Pump Up the Jam in every single one of her episodes.
I think I only watched a little bit of it. I haven't watched. I need to watch
every
some more.
single one of her episodes. She finds a way to bring up Technotronics Pump Up the Jam and play like half of the video.
I remember so specifically when that song came out, because I had not heard anything like that before. I remember it was 1989. I was 9 years old.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, what is this? Complete side note, Throughline did this amazing episode on the history of house music. And because I, as a club girl, a little mini raver from the early thousands. Oh yeah, I loved going clubbing. I did not realize that house music started in Chicago, and it started in the black community in Chicago. Like,
I didn't either.
Yeah, it's an amazing.
All I know is, did you spin the invisible orange around in your hand?
Well, when I was doing it, it was big box, little box, big box, little box, big box, little box. If you could see what my hands are doing, I am holding them parallel to each other upright, and then parallel to each other sideways.
And I was told growing up, just act like you're rolling an orange around in your hand.
Oh yeah.
And every time I hear rave, I go. I
can't believe you're singing Sandstorm. Go
crazy. Yeah. Do you have pictures of yourself in this phase?
I'm trying to think if I do. Maybe in photo albums somewhere.
I would love to see this.
Yeah. I mean, I was never fully crazy like, glow sticks and all that kind of stuff.
Glow sticks and pacifiers. Did you
have a
pacifier?
No, I wasn't that kid. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, so I like to.
But I was punk rock for Jesus once.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What's that band that Roger showed me? Striper?
Yeah, that is 80s hair metal for Jesus. Which is different. We wore a lot of hats growing up, didn't we? Trying to see which one fit.
Oh, so much. I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a jazz singer, an opera singer, or a music theater performer, and then I realized, I liked the pub and smoking too much, so I definitely wasn't going to be an opera singer. And I realized that I was very dramatic, therefore music theater was probably the most appropriate.
Yeah. I still don't know what I want to be, but I'm figuring it out.
Do we ever?
Yeah. Someone sent me like a little picture that was like, I like punk rock because, you get to scream and rap about the government a lot. And I like goth because you can cry about the government a lot. And I like folk, and I like bluegrass because you can hit politicians over the head with your banjo. And I'm like, I like all these things.
Oh, yeah.
And an auto harp is heavier than a banjo.
There you go. Which actually brings us quite neatly, and I will elucidate further on how it does the topic for today. The other depressing thing that I was listening to on Throughline on the way over is about creativity, and how the concept of creativity is only really, as a word, has only been around since the 50s. And what is it?
What?
And right when I pulled up, it was like, but is AI meaning that creativity will disappear?
What?
Like,
Oh, no.
Thank God
no.
Thank God I'm going to my friend's house to be creative.
Let's think of something really weird that only we can think of. Poop. Poop. Purple corkscrew. Negligees.
My poo has shoes. So anyway,
Wrinkled,
creativity.
Orange. Monkeys.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're really creative over here.
I mean, I feel like you're doing the lion's share because my brain is slightly dead.
You had she created a banger this week that we're gonna sing for you. It's a banger.
It's possibly the dumbest song I've ever written.
But aren't all the bangers
True.
really kind of dumb?
Well, so Paul Slade has on his website, he's like, please submit your version of any of these Gallows Ballads because I want to collect songs. And so I was going to submit the ballad version. And then he also says, or any songs that are inspired by.
Ooh.
But I don't know if this is too silly.
It's great.
Okay, just submit because it's
silly, and we need silly right now.
Yeah, I think my brain just
or
went.
We will just go to Sad Town.
Yes, that's exactly it. I think my brain went. It's really late at night. I'm tired, and there is so much terrifyingness in the world. I'm just gonna do the silliest thing possible.
So much drama in the LBC. It's kind of hard.
Yeah,
being Snoop D-O-double-G.
Although apparently he voted for Trump, so we can't.
Why, Snoop? Oh, I know why. And you're cut off. You're cut off.
Anyway.
Random intro.
I feel like this intro, I feel slightly unhinged.
I love it. It's what we're our most creative. I'm doing all sorts of hand gestures.
Yep. So are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
So this story is called The Murder of PC Lines, The Hanging of Jeremiah Corkery, or The Real Peaky Blinders.
Peaky Blinders.
Yeah.
Cool, blimey.
So, as you can tell, I have gone back to old Blighty.
Yay!
And I promise Christmas is not involved in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
So, no Christmas.
No Christmas.
But we have mentioned in the last couple Gallows Ballads in a couple of the episodes, and I was quite fascinated by the idea of them. So I went back to the amazing planetslade.com.
Planet Slade.
He's
it's
amazing.
Planet we love.
Truly. And found this story about one of the only Peaky Blinders hung for murder.
Whoa.
It's a tale of mayhem and murder, but also a harrowing story of the realities of execution by hanging.
Oh, man.
Before we go any further, there's a little more about the Gallows Ballad.
Yes.
Paul Slade has written a fantastic book about them, which I really want to read. He's got like 20 different Gallows Ballads and the true crime stories behind them. So, yeah.
Next season. No.
Right, I know. But his fabulous definition is as follows. The Gallows Ballads were the cheap one-sheet publications knocked out by jobbing print shops for sale to the eager spectators at Britain's regular public hangings. Typically, they'd include a lurid account of the condemned man's crime, plus a set of ballad verses describing his downfall in song. Though often presented as the killer's own words, these last good nights were actually produced by a freelance band of seedy but prolific hacks.
Wow.
And I was going to reword it, but I thought, no, he just does such a great job of putting it together.
Oh, can you imagine if you are going to be hanged for something and then people start singing at you about what you did? From the audience?
Yep.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Like to the tune of something really depressing, like Sweet Home Alabama or something. You're gonna die by noose now. Dun, 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 dun. In the skies are so blue. Dun, 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 dun. You're gonna die by a noose now. Dun, 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 dun. Lord, she's coming home to you.
I mean...
And then you're like, really, that song? That's the song you picked?
Yeah. I mean, usually it was a hymn of some sort, as we have discovered.
Well, in some parts of the South, that is a hymn. Sweet Home Alabama is a hymn.
I am not going to be able to get through this episode.
We can do it.
I am laughing. So I also want to preface this story with a confession. Mm-hmm. As previously suggested, I'm a little squeamish when it comes to violence. So I've never actually watched an episode of Peaky Blinders.
Oh, that's okay.
I know it's meant to be fantastic, but oddly enough, for someone who partakes in listening to and telling a tale or two of murder, I am particularly squeamish about watching it.
That's okay. That's why we're the perfect partnership.
Exactly. And once I had read more about the activities of these gangs in Birmingham, I confirmed that squeamishness is well and truly justified.
Birmingham, which is also in Alabama.
It's all coming together. These gangs were incredibly violent and terrorized not only the police, but the working people who shared their addresses during the late 19th century. So before we delve into more background on what and who exactly the Peaky Blinders were, I'd like to state my sources. As mentioned above, amazingplanetslade.com. Mm-hmm. In particular, his article, Corkery's Farewell, A Peaky Blinders Ballad. And my other source is Peaky Blinders, The Real Story, bracket, The True History of Birmingham's Most Notorious Gangs, close bracket, by Carl Chin. His book is very comprehensive and authoritative, particularly as his great-grandfather, Edward Derrick, was a Peaky Blinder.
Whoa.
And a third-generation criminal. So I would love to tell that story. It's amazing, but it's in the book, so if you're interested, you should check it out. Also, thank you to thecultural.me and their article clarifying the Factory Acts, and good old Wikipedia, as always.
Huzzah! Donate.
Yep.
One and all.
So our ballad has a rather long name.
Ooh.
It's called Corkery's Farewell to His Mother, Brother and Sister. It was printed by Thomas Sansom's print shop in Birmingham, and the lyrics are credited to a J. West. According to Paul Slade, it's quite unusual to find a Gallows Ballad sheet like this printed as late as 1875, because by then hangings were no longer public, but took place in the prison yard instead.
Interesting.
Yeah. So this deprived ballad sellers of one of their major marketplaces for verses like these, which would previously have sold well amongst the Gawkers.
It'd be like hot dogs, pretzels, and this one sheet or one side.
Exactly. Broadside.
Broadside.
Oh my God.
One sheet is where you go and view a house.
Quote, the fact that Sansom thought it was worth producing a ballad sheet about Corkery at all tells us the case must have generated a lot of public interest.
Yeah.
So the events of the story take place a little before these gangs were known as Peaky Blinders, but they were most definitely the forerunners. Therefore, it's useful to know a little more about both these early gangs and the Peakies themselves. So, what exactly were Peaky Blinders and how did they get their name?
Amelia, what exactly are Peaky Blinders and how did they get their name?
And how accurate is the TV version?
Yeah.
Well, you won't be surprised to know that the TV series takes a lot of liberties with many aspects of the history of these gangs.
Yeah.
According to Carl Chin, who has obviously watched the series, so I'm going to take his word for it. If you're a fan and disagree, let us know. But the time period the events take place in the series is entirely wrong.
Oh.
They have set their version in 1919. In fact, most of the gang violence happened before World War I, not after.
Oh.
Interesting. Yeah, there's also a level of glamour to the portrayal of gang life and violence, and of course, as it's a dramatization. But as Chin states, quote, the real Peaky Blinders were unsavory, unglamorous, and unworthy of respect.
Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, the way he speaks about his own great-grandfather, he's like, he was a giant dick, basically. Anyway. According to folklore, the name Peaky Blinder came from the idea that gang members would hide razor blades in the peak of their hats to slice across the eyes of an opponent, blinding them.
The eyes?
Yeah.
Eye slice?
Yeah. That's the mythology behind it.
Holy hell.
However, Carl Chen states that at the height of the Peakies, quote, the type of disposable safety razors featured in the mythology and series were not readily available when the gangs were at their most prolific. Safety razors were advertised from the 1830s but were not disposable. It was not until the early 20th century that Gillette succeeded in perfecting a disposable safety razor blade.
Gillette.
Gillette.
The best a man can get.
Exactly. And apparently they were actually called King C Gillette.
Well.
So, but I just cut the King C for timing.
Time.
The first main advertisements for them did not appear in Britain until 1910, just as the Peaky Blinders and slugging gangs had disappeared. And I'll go into what slugging gangs are.
Thank you.
They would also have been far too expensive for the average working class young man, with a safety razor in 1904 costing twice as much as the poverty line.
Oh.
So
there's a lot of bearded people walking around.
yeah. Or like you'd go to a barber.
A barber to get your teeth pulled and have your kidney out. And
yeah, exactly.
Get a shave.
So, Peaky Blinder was a generic term for Birmingham's roughs that had come into popular use from at least 1890 and was originally interchangeable with slugging gangs as a label for any gang member at the time. They took their name from their fashion of pulling the peak of their flat cap to one side of their head, thus covering or blinding one eye.
Oh.
Yeah. Their weapons were buckled belts, stones, knives, koshes, which is a kind of bludgeon, and boots, all of which they owned as part of their clothing or else were close to hand and free or cheap to obtain.
Yeah.
End quote. Sorry, that's all from Carl Chen.
So slog means like...
Well, I am just about to...
Okay.
Go tell you.
I'm on tenterhooks.
There's also the issue that the early Peakies did not in fact wear flat caps, but we'll speak more about their attire coming. So as I mentioned, the Peakies came from what were known as slugging gangs. These were what gave Birmingham its reputation for violence during the latter 19th and early 20th centuries. Their name came from a slugger, which is a term from boxing, which means someone who strikes heavy blows.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I know, like in Australia, we talk about if something's hard work, it's a hard slog. It's like slog is a word that you can now...
We always associate it with like struggling through the mud or
yeah,
something.
Yeah. So,
but this is like hitting hard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably the equivalent here would be slugger.
Slugger, yeah.
Yeah. So these gangs first came to prominence in April 1872 when 400 members of, quote, the slugging gang terrorised the Cheapside and Hill Street areas of Birmingham, throwing brickbats, which are the ends of bricks, and stones through shop windows and harassing passers-by.
Rude.
They were fully dispersed by the police. This was the culmination of a period of unrest where the police had received numerous complaints about large groups of boys who gathered to break windows in Cheapside and Barford Street. These kinds of events would repeat and continue well into June 1872.
So this is probably like a whole lot more dangerous version of West Side Story.
Yeah, pretty much.
Instead of dancing around, they're just throwing bricks in windows.
Yeah.
And hanging out.
And yeah. So stone throwing was a common nuisance in many towns, not just Birmingham, as stones were a free and readily available weapon.
Yeah.
Like, and also they talked about stone kidney something, but they were literally like cobblestones, like the stones that you could just pick up, and they just pick them up from the street and throw them.
Well, great.
Yeah. But,
Cobblestones.
well, not like, no, these were different. They're kind of rounder and shinier, and you know, cobblestones are kind of square. Yeah. These were a lot more uneven.
Interesting.
But from the late 1860s, it became a huge problem throughout the city. Groups of young men loitering and attacking property, other gang members, innocent bystanders, and the police.
Oh, man.
One explanation came from a Councillor Lewis of the Watch Committee, which oversaw policing. The age-old reason that the young people have nothing to do. The lack of proper recreation grounds. Because of the Factory Act of 1850, which limited the workday to 10 hours, said women and young persons could only work from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and that all work would end at 2 p.m. on Saturday.
Oh, man, you can't work them more than 10 hours a day.
I know. But also, you know, this is when you think like in 1850 is the first time that women and children in particular.
Oh, my word.
You know. So, quote, this is from Councillor Lewis. The lads were not allowed to work after 6 p.m. and as there was no place for recreation, they turned into the street and commenced stone throwing or playing at bandy, which was a game like hockey played with a small ball and sticks.
Ah.
The only public open spaces were on the outskirts of town in middle-class areas or far from the densely populated centre, meaning that Birmingham itself had no recreation spaces at all. So if you're a poor Yeah. But if you're a poor kid, you finish work, there's nowhere to hang out.
Yep.
That's not the pub or, you got nothing to do.
In my hometown, we just went to Walmart.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God.
Or the youth group, church youth group.
Yeah.
But, this seems a lot rougher.
You could say. However, Carlton says that there were other reasons for this escalation of violence. The police had only recently been formed in the 1840s, and there was a lot of antagonism towards them in their attempts to control public behaviour. There was also the notion of loyalty to the street. Quote, "The street was the living room and playground of the poor, and its people were bound together by kinship networks, communal living, and shared experiences. In a nation where so much was denied to the poor, the street belonged to them. They came from it, and it belonged to them, whilst they also belonged to it.
Yeah.
The streets in poor quarters became almost living entities, embodying the qualities which the poor themselves lauded, hardness and ability to fight, and a character which was rough and ready, and above all, plain-spoken and down to earth. Outsiders among the working class did not talk of the residents and the streets separately. Rather, they were one, a unity indivisible and frightening to those who didn't belong."
Yeah, like Sesame Street.
Yeah.
So think about it. A community, there's
Yep.
monsters
Yep.
living in trash cans on the street.
Yes.
Mr. Hooper is just
Yep.
trying to get by.
Yep.
Yep.
A big bird.
Yeah. Just living on the streets in a big nest. And you have to do what he says. There's vampires running around. But, yeah. Would it were like Sesame Street?
Oh my gosh, if only so much would have... what if everything were like Sesame Street? It would just be lovely. So this loyalty would often lead to clashes between streets. Another reason for this antipathy to the police was the enforcement of laws which attacked popular culture and had been passed for the protection of the middle class. The urban centres of industrial Britain terrified the middle class. They were overcrowded and growing. The population more than doubled in 40 years.
Wow.
Around 35% of this increase were under 15, with the majority under 30.
Well, there's nothing to do.
Yep.
Except for each other.
Yeah.
Population's going to boom.
Yep. They were packed into poorer working class neighbourhoods around the town centre, so, much like in the US, the middle class fled to the suburbs. Much of the young population were boisterous, raucous, and fond of rough sports and illegal amusements. One thing I read somewhere that I just thought was hilarious was that they could get in trouble for playing games of soccer in the street because it was rowdy.
Rowdy.
So,
Wow.
and there's this thing of like, they're not allowed to play sports in the streets. So they're not allowed to play soccer.
No
they're
soccer.
Not allowed to like
no stick ball.
Yeah.
No.
And there was actually a game that they called,
Bandy.
it wasn't called stickball, no, it was called something else, which is basically like, you throw up a stone up in the air and you hit it with a stick. And I can't remember, it's somewhere in here. But...
Get it into Mr. Hooper's store. 10 points.
10 points, Gryffindor. So,
but like, there's so much worse that they could be doing, which they probably are doing.
Well, you're
On
just
top of
about
the-
to hear.
okay.
Yeah, you're just about to hear. In Birmingham, because of the rapidly increasing population, most of the land in the older parts of town was built on, while the back-to-back houses that filled these areas had no gardens. So, like we were saying. Therefore, the only places for recreation and for young men to meet were street corners or small plots of wasteland.
Wow.
So there's literally nowhere for them to go. Due to their working 6 days a week, they mostly met late on Saturdays or on Sundays. Their favourite pastime was a gambling game called Pitch and Toss, involving throwing coins at a mark, the one being closest winning the right to toss all the coins in the air and keep the ones... we have a game called Two Up in Australia that's also like a street gambling. And that one you get 2 pennies and you put them on a stick. And then you toss them up in the air and you have to bet if it's going to be 2 heads, 2 tails, or
Whoa.
one. Yeah.
Kind of like Pass the Pigs.
Oh, is that... I don't know that one.
They're literally, it's a board game.
Oh, wait, no, I do. And then, yes.
Or Toss the Pigs or something
Yes,
like
yes. And I have played that game. But
yeah. More dangerous, I would assume.
Yeah, and because it's also gambling.
Yes.
So there's also, yes. So the surprising thing about these groups of young men is that they were not all from the criminal class and unemployable as was assumed. So there was this assumption that they were like, oh, they're all terrible and they're just criminals and they're
Right.
But they were mostly industrial workers who made up the majority of Birmingham's young male workforce.
Yeah, probably factory kids, right?
Yeah, they held down respectable jobs, but their life outside of work was filled with violence.
Sure.
The gang seemed to offer a place of refuge. Quote, feeling socially marginalized, the badge of identity from belonging to a street gang linked to the small area in which they lived had meaning.
Sure.
End quote. Naturally, the middle classes disapproved of much of their activities. Rowdy groups of young men congregating for nefarious reasons, particularly on the Sabbath. So the police were encouraged to crack down on it.
Officer Krupke.
Exactly. However, this crackdown and the attempted stamping out of street gambling was unfortunately a catalyst for more and more attacks on police, as well as the emergence of the street gangs, which would become the slogging gangs and eventually Peaky Blinders.
Wow.
When police would attempt to arrest men for pitch and toss games, they would often be met with a hail of stones from the detainees' fellow gang members. As a result, the response to reports of these games became slower and slower as the police would be afraid of the violence they would be met with in trying to make arrests. Plus, they were vastly outnumbered. In 1867, the, quote, authorized police strength of Birmingham, end quote, was 400, meaning one officer for 813 people.
Ooh.
That year alone, there were 465 assaults on police.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, that's more than one a day.
Wow.
Well and truly more than one a day. However, these assaults were not all due to the gambling crackdowns. There was also the enforcing of licensing laws from their presence around the pubs and their interference in the drinking habits and drinking places of the working class. By 1873, the term slogging gangs had started to be used. They were increasingly associated with certain streets which were infamous for their tough youths, and that as well as attacking the police and innocent bystanders, these loosely organized gangs were attacking each other. Their weaponry had expanded. Alongside stones often pulled out of the street, brickbats, and even roof slates, gutta percha, which I'd never heard of, but apparently it's a thing. It's a type of latex made from sap, like from rubber, from a tree. So I'd never heard of it, but apparently it's a thing. Neddies, which were bludgeons, and sticks with iron at the end were also used. So they would often fashion their own weapons. In an attempt to install more urban discipline, the police were messing with ordinary folks they had not bothered before. Therefore, the attitude of the working class overall toward the police worsened, and initiatives directed at controlling things like drunkenness and street gambling provoked hostility. This then meant the assaults on police increased not only in Birmingham, but throughout the UK in the 1870s. So before we head into the events of the 7th of March, 1875, which is known as the Navigation Street Riot, I want to take a little detour into what these Peaky Blinders or slogging gang members would have looked like. But this is actually specifically the Peaky Blinders, so it's a little bit later, but it's so priceless, and also I believe there is massive cultural significance, which we will go into.
Let's do it.
So Arthur Matheson lived in Summer Lane in Birmingham during their heyday in the 1890s, and this is his description, quote, "He took pride in his personal appearance and dressed the part with skill. Bell-bottom trousers, secured by a buckle belt, hobnailed boots, a jacket of sorts, a gaudy scarf, and a billycock hat with a long, elongated brim. This hat was worn well over one eye, hence the name Peaky Blinder. His hair was prison cropped all over his head, except for a quiff in front, which was grown long and plastered obliquely on his forehead."
Interesting.
To expand a little more, the bell-bottoms were such a distinguishing feature that the gangs would be also called the bell-bottom crew.
Interesting.
I just assumed bell-bottoms were
60s.
But also I guess sailors wore them.
Right.
The bell part of the trousers was often adorned with a line of pearl buttons.
Oh.
The billycock was a type of bowler hat, widely regarded as a characteristic of the working man, so not the flat cap.
Right.
The brim was made to fit the sides, whilst the front came to a point like the spout of a jug. It was worn on the side of the head to show the quiff or donkey fringe on the other side. According to a contemporary writer in the Birmingham Mail, this tuft, quote, gave an evil appearance to the face of the wearer. One journalist suggested that the close-cropped hair meant that a peaky's scars from belt buckles and a policeman's truncheon could be seen more easily. Quote, he regarded these scars in much the same light a soldier looked upon medals as honourable evidence of deeds done. So that's another thing that when it comes to later on, the belt buckle would become a weapon, a vicious weapon.
The belt buckle.
Yeah, because you could just whip your belt off and absolutely ruin someone's face and head. And nasty. When Carl Chen in the book lists some of the injuries in various altercations, and some of them are truly horrific, like down to the bone. People's
Holy moly!
Yeah.
So I am picturing. You remember Pinocchio?
Yeah,
the Disney version. So what was the little kid that gets turned into a donkey? What's his name?
I automatically thought of that particular haircut that features in what in the UK they called chavs, which you'd often see them with this fringe plastered down.
Right.
You know the one I mean?
Yes.
There will be a picture on the Instagram so you can see, but I swear to God, I've seen young men with this exact haircut where it's shaved all over with this fringe plastered down in the front. And I thought, oh my gosh, I wonder if that's left over. But the other one that I thought of was Clockwork Orange.
Yeah,
and
the Droogs.
Yeah, and whether Anthony Burgess borrowed a bit from that, because with the hat and the eyeliner, like the mascara, it just...
And causing mayhem.
Yeah.
This guy...
Oh, yeah.
Lampwick.
Yeah. There's his little... And he turns into a donkey.
Over to one side.
Yeah. Yep.
Whoa.
Yeah.
No belt buckle, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So...
Lampwick aside.
So what's his accent?
Probably thick Cockney kind of.
Is it, or is it like...
Or maybe
American?
it was like Shane.
Yeah,
like
that's
James
what I was
Cagney
wondering.
kind of thing.
We're gonna have to look it up after we finish recording.
You probably like chewed tobacco and spit it out or something.
Yeah. So after all this background, let's move on to the sad story of PC Lines and his murderer, Jeremiah Corkery.
Wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
let's do
we're gonna sing the original ballad. What?
I actually meant to put it up ahead when I spoke about it at the top.
What's
that
the big
done.
long? What's the long
it's
title?
Corkery's farewell to his mother, brother, and sisters.
Corkery's farewell to his mother, brother, and sisters.
This is another one where the tune does not exist in anywhere I can find. So I wrote
one. And
I feel like it sounds a little bit more like a country.
I think it sounds
a little
great.
Country,
it's going to sound great.
Okay.
It does sound great. And you're going to hear it right now.
Here it is.
Oh, my poor mother dear, for your son just shed a tear, and think of me when I am far away. My brothers, sisters too, I hope will be kind to you, till we all meet on that great judgment day. He lay in Warwick jail, his fate he did bewail, his companions now in sorrow do complain. They think of friends so dear, who are shedding many tears, and whose sentences have caused a deal of pain. The sentence it was passed, poor Corkery's die was cast, on the scaffold, oh, 'twas such an awful fate. Alas, he is no more, his friends they suffer sore, take warning all before it is too late. Oh, my poor mother dear, for your son just shed a tear, and think of me when I am far away. My brothers, sisters too, I hope will be kind to you, till we all meet on that great judgment day. His companions now you see have escaped the fatal tree. Their sentences were most severe to all. 'Tis done without a thought, the evildoers wrought, and by Satan's dark temptation now they fall. Oh, you parents only think what it is to be in drink, what crimes and depredations follow then. You are good for any strife, to use poker or use knife, and to act like beasts instead of being men. Foul Satan and his imps attend everyone who drinks, but moderation is a maxim true. For men forsake their home, and women too will roam, and for wicked crimes then some are made to rue. Oh, my poor mother dear, for your son just shed a tear, and think of me when I am far away. My brothers, sisters too, I hope will be kind to you, till we all meet on that great judgment day. Poor Cresswell and Charles Mee, Thomas Leonard now you see, and Thomas Whalen they have sent for life. For men in youth and bloom, perhaps to meet their doom, pray think upon it and avoid such strife. We hope with heavenly love to see Corkery up above, with angels and his soul forever blessed. For your dearest parents' sake, all your crimes you must forsake, then their happiness and minds will be at rest. Oh, my poor mother dear, for your son just shed a tear, and think of me when I am far away. My brothers, sisters too, I hope will be kind to you, till we all meet on that great judgment day.
That was great.
Thanks.
So we just stopped and also listened to a little bit of Lampwick from the original Disney Pinocchio. And he sounds a little like Mickey Rooney.
Yeah. He's got that teenage, like, voice is just broken kind of sound.
Yeah.
But definitely American.
Yes, definitely American.
Yeah.
But he looks like what Amelia was describing, a Peaky Blinder or a slogging gang member.
They also had, in a couple of other descriptions, they also had, like, often, like, a fancy scarf as well.
Oh, yeah.
So they were quite dapper in their own way.
Dandy, yes.
So poor PC Lyons was the first policeman killed by the gangs, but he was certainly not the last.
Oh, no.
Yeah. The trouble began on Sunday, March 8, 1875, between 8 and 9 p.m., when George Cunnington, landlord of the Bull's Head pub on Fordriff Street, called the police to deal with a recent robbery.
Oh.
On the previous evening, one of his barmaids had seen two men rifling through Mrs. Cunnington's room upstairs and had reported it to Mr. Cunnington, who discovered some property was missing. One of the men was a William Downs, who came back to the Bull's Head to drink the next day.
Not smart.
No, I know. Just like Corkery was also in the pub with him, along with 10 men who would later be arrested for the ensuing riot. The oldest member of the group was 23. The youngest was 17.
Whoa.
Yeah, so they're young.
Yeah.
Detective Constables Fletcher and Goodman arrested Downs before clearing the pub, taking him to the nearest police station. Corkery then emerged from the other bar, realised what had happened, was heard to say, "Have they got Bill Downs? Come on," and was followed out by Richard Smith, John Cresswell, and Thomas Whalen.
Uh-oh.
Cunnington testified that the police and Downs were only about 4 or 5 yards down the road when Corkery came out of the pub, leading a group of about 15 to 20 men after them.
Oh.
Confirmed by DC Fletcher. Quote, "We were then followed and stoned. When we reached the corner of Fordriff Street, we met PC Lyons, to whom I cried to keep back the mob. I then hurried with my prisoner to the lockup, on the way meeting Sergeant Joseph Fletcher near the corner of Navigation Street and Suffolk Street. I cried out, "For God's sake, run back and assist Lyons." End quote.
So he was all by himself against 20 ruffians.
Yes. This Sergeant Fletcher did, arriving just as Lyons was chasing one of the men away. Fletcher was immediately attacked and knocked to the ground, ending up with a serious wound over his left eye. He was then beaten by Cheswell, Corkery, and Whalen, who kicked him in the head till he blacked out.
Whoa.
Yeah. Lyons ran to his rescue, striking Cheswell in the head with his baton. Corkery and Whalen scarpered, but in Corkery's case, not too far. Thomas Leonard, one of the 10 men later arrested, would later claim that, quote, "Corkery looked back. I saw him put his hand in his pocket, pull out a knife, and run down the street his hardest. I saw him get up to the constable. He then ran back again and, coming down the street by me, said, 'It's me that has chivied him. See? Feel the knife. It's wet.'"
Oh.
Chivy, as you can guess, is where shiv comes from.
Right.
That we use now. So I'm sure you can divine the meaning. A Fordorf Street umbrella maker named James Moore, who witnessed the assault, testified, quote, "Corkery came up and ran at Lyons. I saw him raise his hands and strike the constable 2 blows upon the side of his head. Just as Corkery ran at him, Lyons' staff struck him on the eye. The officer then staggered and fell." And later, end quote, and later, quote, "I saw Corkery run up to him. I saw the blade of the knife which he held in his hand and saw him put it up to Lyons' face and run away. Lyons began to bleed from the left ear."
Ooh.
So other witnesses would corroborate this version of events.
Left ear. Yikes.
So by this time, a woman and her young son were helping Fletcher to a cab which had volunteered to take him to the hospital.
Wow.
As he passed Lyons still on the ground, he heard him say, "I'm dying."
Oh, no.
Yeah. John Cruz was a decorator who lodged at the Bull's Head, and he saw a number of the gang running from Navigation Street, with Corkery leading them, shouting that the coppers were coming. He then ran into Corkery the next day, who had a bandage on his ear from where Lyons had hit him. "I said to him, 'You've got it hot,'" Cruz told the court. He replied, "I got knocked down, but the copper is stabbed." He later said, "I done it. I chivied the copper." He also said that if Whalen or Rogers were pinched for stabbing, he should round that it was him. Round here means to confess. So PC Lyons was taken to Queen's Hospital, where a severe wound under his left ear was found, still bleeding. He said from his hospital bed that Whalen, Rogers, Cresswell, and one other man he did not recognise had all been near him when he was stabbed. And Carl Chin suggests that this is... Paul Slade suggests that this is probably because that street was PC Lyons' beat, and that Corkery was from a different street, and that's why he didn't recognise him.
Yeah.
So, quote, "It must have been one of the 4 that stabbed me," he added, "but I could not say which." Lyons survived for 17 days after the riot, but died in hospital on March 24 at the age of 30, leaving behind a wife and young daughter.
Wow.
He'd been in the police force for 11 years.
30.
Yeah. Queen's House surgeon Francis Hamilton confirmed it was the stab wounds that killed him.
Wow.
Yeah.
17 days. Ouch.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a long time to be dying of a wound.
Yeah.
And that period of time as well.
Ugh.
You know. So arrests of the rioters were swift. Cresswell and Rogers were taken into custody on March 7, the night it all went down. So it was really, really quick. And Smith and Whalen the next day. Corkery was arrested on March 10. The magistrate's hearing to determine who should face which charges was held on March 30 at Birmingham Police Court. Corkery, Kelly, Cresswell, Smith, Whalen, Rogers, McNally, Gannett, Jackson, Leonard, and Bowden were all in the dock.
Wow.
Plus another young man called Dennis Kennedy who appeared to join the riot partway through.
Oof.
I'm just trying to think if I read...
That's a lot of people.
All their names were... Oh, here we go. Okay.
So now we're going to have a roll call like the Mickey Mouse Club, but it is of gang members.
Yeah. So it's Thomas Whalen... Oh, sorry. So we've heard William Kelly, John Cresswell, Richard Smith, Thomas Whalen, Aaron Rogers, Samuel McNally, Stephen Gannett, Thomas Jackson, Thomas Leonard, and Thomas Bowden.
A lot of Thomases.
Yeah, a lot of Thomases. So that's all their names.
And Cubby. No, I'm kidding.
I don't understand that.
Sorry. In the 50s, there was the Mickey Mouse Club, and they had the littlest one's name was Cubby.
Oh, there we go. Of the 12 men before the magistrates that day, Kennedy, Smith, Jackson, Gannett, and Bowden were discharged for lack of evidence. When it was declared they were free to go, they ran straight outside to a group of family and well-wishers. Like, they ran out of the courtroom. They all then apparently went straight to the nearest pub.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
The remaining 7 men were all formally charged with taking part in a riot and assaulting the police. Corkery was then also charged with the deliberate murder of PC Lyons. His fate would be decided at Warwick Assizes on July 9th. Just going to mention a brief aside here because I didn't know what assizes were. So assizes were periodic courts that heard civil and criminal cases until 1972 when they were replaced by the Crown Court.
Interesting.
They were presided over by justices of assize who travelled across 7 circuits of the country.
Can you spell that? I'm sorry. Assize?
Yeah, A-S-S-I-Z-E. I-Z-E.
Oh, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, I have, but had no idea what it actually meant.
I love learning things, yeah.
Right? The more you know. Lyons was buried at Birmingham's Witton Cemetery on March 29, 1875. Mourners lined the streets, men doffed their hats. The Birmingham Mail reported that, quote, all Aston appeared to have turned out for the occasion, and the vast space of wasteland near the brook was literally covered with human beings. The branches of trees and dead walls furnished accommodation for those who desired to be spectators of the scene. There could not have been less than 100,000 persons throughout the entire route.
Wow.
Yeah. So Aston's a part of Birmingham.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Corkery's supporters wasted no time in intimidating witnesses due to testify. So Anne Whalen, who was Thomas Whalen's sister, had named Corkery as the murderer at the magistrate's hearing. It was claimed that she and other witnesses were pinning it on Corkery to save their own friends and family. She was struck and kicked one evening by a James Hamilton and his wife, accusing her of, quote, swearing away the lives of innocent men.
Whoa.
So, and then there was another story about a guy who was... But that one I kind of go, you were talking shit. Yeah. Like, he was in the pub talking shit about the trial. And so a bunch of them beat the shit out of him.
Yep.
So it's like, well...
Snitches get stitches.
I mean, yeah. So the murder trial on July 9 called the same witnesses from the magistrate's hearing, and they repeated exactly the same things that they'd previously said. In his closing statement for the defense, Corkery's lawyer tried to cast doubt on this evidence, saying several of the witnesses were friends of Thomas Whalen's, who, quote, clearly had a motive and an interest in coming here to save one at the expense of another, end quote. Obviously, we heard this idea earlier when Anne Whalen was attacked, and even Corkery himself would tell the jury, quote, there is a plot to put me in this case and to get other people out, end quote. Corkery was apparently rather subdued throughout this trial, which differed from his confidence in the previous hearing. The Birmingham Daily Post stated that throughout the whole of the case, there was an absence of that defiant carriage which characterized him before the magistrates.
Lampwick.
Yeah. It took the jury just 15 minutes to find him guilty of murder, at which point the judge donned his black cap and sentenced Corkery to hang. As the sentence reached its customary final words, may the Lord have mercy on your soul, Corkery uttered a faltering amen.
Wow.
End quote. Corkery tried to fight his fate. He wrote to Home Secretary Richard Cross, confessing that he'd done it but begging to be spared the death penalty. Cross replied that the law must take its course. Corkery's friends and family started a petition pleading for his life and presented that to the Home Secretary too, but got the same response. So the execution took place on Tuesday, July 27 at Warwick Jail. Corkery did not have a restful night before, according to a reporter from the Birmingham Daily Post who witnessed and wrote about the whole event. Quote, on Monday night, he retired to bed about 11 o'clock. He, however, got very little sleep, tossing about in a troubled manner and evincing much mental suffering. He rose at 4:30, and from that time until the moment of his execution, his terror and consequent helplessness appeared to rapidly increase.
Wow.
Breakfast was offered him, but he refused to touch it and sat in his cell in a most wretched and dejected state.
Don't go stabbing people, yo.
Don't go stab. But there's also part of me, and it's a little bit long. and we can decide if it's too much to put in, but there is a harrowing description of the hanging from the reporter of the Post.
I mean, I kind of want to hear it because I'm morbid.
But it also is the thing of he was a stupid young man doing. He was 22 when he was hung. Like, he did a stupid thing. He did a cruel, awful, stupid thing.
Really stupid thing.
But this description is, just from a psychological standpoint alone, it breaks my heart.
I think you have to do it.
Yeah, so we'll get to it. At about 7 a.m., an hour before the hanging scheduled time, he was visited by a priest and they prayed together. At a few minutes to 8, he was led with the priest, Father Kelly, to a small room where the hangman, William Marwood, who had pioneered the long drop technique, introduced himself and supervised the process of Corkery's wrists being tied together. So William Marwood is quite famous. I've read on planetslate.com that apparently he supervised 175 hangings in his career. But this long drop technique was basically, instead of the stool being knocked out of them, or we're used to the idea of a scaffold, a gallows on a platform. Sure. This meant the body would drop into a pit. So that's why they call it the long drop. Yeah. And the idea being that it gave them much more room to make sure that the person was dead and not suffering the way
so break their necks automatically and not have them suffocate.
So so that's and Paul Slade goes into it a lot more about the supervision of it. Goes into the actual detail. I
just say, hi, I'm Robert. I will be your executioner for this evening. We see that you have chosen the long drop technique. Wise choice. Very good. Very good. Would you like hood or no hood? Okay. Very good. Very good. I can't. The executioner introducing themselves.
I know, right?
Ridiculous to me.
Yeah. So Corkery apparently said nothing, looking only at the priest. Then the clock struck 8, and the group moved towards the gallows. Waiting for them there was a small crowd of prison officials and reporters, including the postman who filed this eyewitness report. The morning was beautifully fine, there being a clear blue sky overhead and the sun shining brightly. The very beauty of the morning, however, appeared by contrast to intensify the deathly and shocking look of the condemned man. He walked slowly and hesitatingly forward, stopping when about 4 feet from the gallows and appearing as though about to faint. His face was deadly pale, his mouth half opened and his eyes nearly closed. He trembled violently and his knees occasionally seemed to almost give way. Marwood took him by the shoulder and gently urged him forward onto the drop, placing him immediately below the fatal noose. A short halt was then made, and Father Kelly, advancing to the front of the culprit, took him by the hand and motioned to him to kneel. Corkery immediately did so, dropping heavily on his knees and causing the drop to give forth a hollow sound in that image alone. Ugh. Father Kelly then knelt in front of him and commenced a long confessional prayer, Corkery repeating the words. During this prayer, the priest held close to the condemned man's face a black ebony crucifix, occasionally waving it gently before his eyes. Corkery expressed his deep sorrow that he had been guilty of a fearful offence and humbly implored mercy. At one point there occurred a sentence referring to the death he was about to meet, and on repeating those words, the murderer's head sank to his breast. At the conclusion of these devotions, Corkery was told to rise. All his strength, however, seemed to have deserted him. He made an effort to regain his footing, but it would have been unsuccessful had not 2 of the wardens assisted him. On being placed in an erect position, he staggered and would have fallen had not the wardens again been vigilant. Marwood, however, steadied the culprit, and from that time he stood pretty firmly. While his legs were being pinioned, he repeated another prayer with Father Kelly and continued to do so until the executioner drew the white cap over his face. At this time, the felon's features were dreadfully agitated, his lips working convulsively, and there being strong nervous twitches of the muscles of the face. Probably in consequence of Corkery placing his chin on his breast, Marwood was some considerable time in adjusting the rope. At length, however, he accomplished it to his satisfaction, and stepping quickly across the drop, he ran halfway down the stairs leading into the pit and drew aside a long iron lever. In a moment, the drop fell with a dull, heavy sound, and the unhappy murderer's body descended a distance of nearly 5 feet with a swift rush, being brought up at the end of the rope with a terrific jerk.
Oof.
I
thought a long drop would be longer than 5 feet.
Yeah. But I just see this... I see this kid.
He's a kid. He's a child.
Kid
yeah.
Who did a stupid thing.
Right. I mean, I cringe at the stupid things that I've done when I was in my early 20s and didn't kill anybody, but yeah. No. But you do stupid shit.
Yeah. And the writer, my only thing is that he says that the white cap is over his face, so how do we see
his expressions?
Yeah. That's the only thing at the end that I was like, there's a little bit of license taken with that. But I just think it's...
Oh, the poor, like, he seems like a boy to me, like, not being able to stand up and, so awful.
Yeah. And the thing that occurs to me is also like, this is the reality of capital punishment.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I know that they were common and people used to go and watch them. I cannot imagine going to an execution. Like,
Well, it's you know, like the Colosseum and the lions and like people used to watch this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we can watch it fake on our TV screens now, but
well, I guess, but just the fact that it's, I mean, I love horror movies. I love them because they're ridiculous, but I can't imagine going to see that for real.
Yeah.
Just not having anything vested in it. Just to see somebody die.
Yeah.
That's wild to me.
Yeah, me too. So, as Marwood reached out a hand to still the body's spin, Father Kelly continued his prayers. Wardens hoisted a black flag over... This is Paul... This is... we're back to Paul Slade's description here. Mm-hmm. That's the end of the post. So wardens hoisted a black flag over the jail's main gates, telling the crowd of some 15 people gathered there that Corkery was dead. So the post says that this group was mostly made up of women and young girls with infants in their arms, inferring that the infants were Corkery's and the young girls his conquests.
15
people gathered, yeah. Whoa. The group was mostly made up, is what it says.
Okay.
So after an hour left hanging on the gallows, which was apparently custom.
An hour.
I guess to make sure they're dead.
I guess so.
His body was taken down, placed in a cheap coffin, and interred with other murderers in the prison's own graveyard. Thus, quote, "Thus passed away Jeremiah Corkery, who was guilty of a fearful crime and who amply merited its terrible punishment," concluded the post. Yeah, he was only 22.
Wow.
So that is the story of the murder of PC Lyons and the unfortunate young Jeremiah Corkery, and a brief history of the gang life that led to the awful crime and its equally awful consequence. And as I said,
not to make light of things, but it's like when your mom says, if you want to jump off a bridge, if your friends were going to jump off the bridge, would you do it too?
Yeah.
If your friends are going to go around stabbing people, don't do it too.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that Carl Chin talks a lot about is like, the people that lived on these streets weren't all criminals. They were attacked by these gangs too. They were just ordinary, hardworking, working class people who were poor. So there were a lot of victims of these gangs that...
It seems like our old friend, toxic masculinity.
I mean, yeah.
And,
well, I mean, we look at it today. The young men banding in groups and then
trying
doing
to prove themselves.
Stupid, the radicalization of young men.
Yep.
Whether it be towards Islam or towards white nationalism or like whatever that is, it's young men with nothing to do.
Yep.
And can, not always, obviously, but it's a dangerous path.
It is, and it's really sad. So tell me about this song that you wrote.
Oh yeah, it's just a bit dumb,
which is great.
Yeah, as I said, I came up with I just sat on the couch and I was like, I've got to write my song. And I literally just went, find a hobby, just find a hobby.
Yeah.
Just find something to do.
With your hands.
It would be,
besides stabbing people.
Yes, it would prevent so much of what happened in this story.
Yeah.
And then I became a little game with myself to come up with really
hobbies.
Dumb rhymes.
Oh, yeah. That's a good hobby in itself.
So, yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to sing it.
Let's sing my tired, dumb brain.
Let's sing it. I guarantee you, if you listen to this, you're going to be walking down the street or driving somewhere and be like, find a hobby. It's going to stick in your head.
So there we
Are
go.
you ready for this earworm? Because here we go.
Jeremiah Corkery, if you'd only embraced doggery, then your head wouldn't have wound up in a noose. There's only one reason the police your gang was seizing, and that's because your time was spent too loosely. If you'd enjoyed a flower press or tidying up a little mess, you'd have been a much happier bloke. Collected a stamp, gazed at a star, or even learned to play guitar, then your better qualities you'd have awoke. Find a hobby, find a hobby. Is it so hard to find something more useful to do? Find a hobby, just one little hobby. Then PC lines would still be here too. I know that Brahmy's rough streets could knock a chap right off his feet and make him think that crime's the way to go. But as one who likes to stay inside and conflict give a birth soups wide, I can safely say I've never shivved a foe.
Good for you.
Thanks. There's much to be said for collecting stamps, or maybe even ladies' leg lamps. Whatever your heart decides to do, it could save a young policeman's life and prevent your loved one so much strife. Oh, Jeremiah, I am begging you, find a hobby, find a hobby. Is it so hard to find something more useful to do? Find a hobby, just one little hobby. Then PC lines would still be here too. But as it goes, it's way too late for you. And your slugging mates are long dead now, it's true. But for anyone who wants to cause some trouble, go find your peaceful passion on the double.
I like paper mache.
I like crossword puzzles.
Aww.
Find a hobby, find a hobby. Is it so hard to find something more useful to do? Find a hobby, just one little hobby. Then you can be an upstanding citizen too. One more time. Find a hobby, find a hobby. Is it so hard to find something more useful to do? Find a hobby, just one little hobby. Then PC lines would still be here too.
There it was in all its glory.
It was amazing.
Thanks.
I love it. You're wonderful.
You're wonderful.
I love the way your brain works, friend.
My brain. I'm all about a rhyme scheme, and sometimes I will throw in so many words to try and make that happen.
Sure.
My
I
whole
love
listening
that.
to be there.
It's my favorite. It's very, it's very Tim Minchin-y.
That is a huge compliment.
I feel
I enjoy Mr. Minchin enormously.
Yes, I think he would love this song.
I do have ways of potentially getting it.
So Tim, if you're listening,
oh God, imagine.
Can you imagine a Tim Minchin written musical about this?
Oh yes, I absolutely can.
Let's do it, Tim. We'll be your book writers.
Wait, about the podcast or about the story?
About this story, about the Corkery story.
I just had a vision. Tim mentioned writing a musical about us in your
Our
apartment.
podcast. And, oh, man.
This has been a very unhinged episode.
I really like it. I like it.
We have covered so many different
So
topics.
much ground.
So much ground.
My mom always said I had a hot-toed brain, where I would just make connections in my brain to things, and I would just change a subject, and no one would know why I made that link.
Do you know, I do the same thing, and I will say to people, this is how I got there. I promise it has something I will explain the change.
Yes.
Because, it will be all of a sudden you'll come out with something.
We both have hot-toed brains, a.k.a. ADHD. I don't know. I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but I bet I do. And I blame improv. I blame improv for my ADHD.
There's a lot we can blame improv for.
Yeah. It's talking to cults.
I think we just need to say what we learned.
Oh, well, I learned to find a hobby.
Find a hobby, build people parks.
Yes, and create youth programs, but don't be creepy about it.
Yeah.
John
Wayne Gacy.
Don't be creepy about it. Boys and girls clubs are great.
Yep. Was it Big Brother, Big Sister? Those ones.
Come on. Don't be a toxic male. Yeah. Poor kids.
Yeah. Find constructive ways to express your emotions.
Yes. And get good friends.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, anyway.
I'm sure, I don't know if there's a river in Birmingham, but
I'm sure there is.
Yeah. I'm sure there is. I
In
just don't know what the name
Clockwork
is.
Orange, he pushes his friends into the river.
Oh, there you go.
Anyway, you can follow us on the socials at Cormac and Gwen. And follow us on YouTube. If you search Cormac and Gwen, you'll find our channel. You can, if you have any corrections or questions or something you would like to say that happened to you funny during the day, or you just want to have a creative phrase you'd like to tell us, email us at cormacandgwen@gmail.com. And let's say the most creative thing that you can tell me in an email we'll read out on the podcast.
I was sitting there going, oh, that's interesting. And they went, oh, yeah, because I brought up that creativity.
Yeah, because we're battling AI, my friends.
Yep. And also, please rate, review, subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Tell your friends.
Drop us a comment, like all of the things.
We like it.
Yeah, we love it.
Yeah. And, be careful. Watch your teenagers.
Yeah,
watch your teenagers. If they're goth, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't know where I went with that. No. If they're in a gang, make sure it's a good one. And that doesn't do murder stabs. And make sure that they don't meet and throw rocks at people. Make sure they don't do that by the river. And make sure they definitely don't gather in some dark holler.
I've lost the plot.
I never had it.